Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
I discovered that I was my mother's boss's daughter and my father disowned me. Today I beg to be part of my wedding. My life changed dramatically 7 years ago when my father found some text messages on my mother's cell phone. These messages revealed something that would destroy our family. My mother had been having an affair with her boss. My father, upon discovering these messages that my mother had forgotten to delete, confronted her immediately. There was no way she could deny the obvious, which led to an explosive argument that was etched in my memory. In the midst of the confrontation, my mother finally confessed the whole truth. She admitted that the affair had been occurring on and off for much of the nearly 20 years she had been working at the company. But the most devastating part was yet to come. When my father asked specifically about the period before I was born, my mother, visibly nervous, revealed that the affair was already going on when she became pregnant with me. This confession raised a terrible possibility: my father might not really be my biological father. I watched as my father's face lost all its color as he processed this information. He turned to me with a look that reflected pain and distrust. With a trembling voice, he declared that we needed to take a DNA test immediately. At the time, I was 18 years old and had lived believing that I had a perfect family. In a matter of hours, everything I thought I knew fell apart. Not only had I discovered my mother's infidelity, but now I was faced with the possibility that the man who had raised me was not my biological father. The DNA test results came back and confirmed our worst fears: my father was not my biological father. When we saw the results, I felt my world completely collapse. My father, who had always been my support and my hero, fell silent, staring at the paper. In the days that followed, I tried desperately to talk to him, but he was consumed by anger. He completely ignored me, as if I had ceased to exist. If I tried to approach him, he responded with screams or he withdrew into himself. All I wanted was his comfort, no matter what those results said. The situation worsened when my father announced that he would divorce my mother and move out. He made it very clear to me that he wanted no relationship with me and expressly forbade me to call him Dad. These words hit me like a punch in the stomach. It was as if he was trying to erase me completely from his life. Despite my pleas to talk, he simply left. He filed for divorce and cut off all contact with me. I remember one occasion, months later, when he finally answered one of my calls, only to shout at me to stop calling and tell me that he was disgusted to hear my voice. His words still resonate in my mind to this day. During this time, my mother constantly apologized, but her words changed nothing. My anger towards her was intense for having destroyed our family. I blamed her for everything: for making my father hate me, for hiding the truth from me, and above all, for destroying our family. Her apologies could not repair the damage or alleviate the pain she had caused. I felt trapped living with her. Fortunately, I was about to start university. My parents had been saving for my education for years, and despite the divorce, my father did not deny me that money. He told my mother during the process that it would be her last gift to me and that she should not expect anything more in the future. When I was accepted into a good university, I took the money, packed my things, and left home. Once I was away, I decided to cut off all communication with my mother. Although she tried to contact me several times, apologizing and seeking to rebuild our relationship, I could not forgive her. The damage she had caused was too deep, and my pain and anger were too intense to allow her back into my life. As for my father, the situation remained the same. We have not spoken since the day he told me he wanted nothing to do with me. Over time, I have learned to accept his decision and to live with it. During these 7 years, I have made a huge effort to build my life independently. I have dedicated myself to achieving success in everything I have undertaken, and I can proudly say that I have achieved a lot. I have reached a point where I no longer feel that I need either of my parents. I have not forgiven my mother, and as for my father, he no longer affects me. The pain he caused me has been transformed into indifference. A month ago, my boyfriend James proposed to me and I accepted. James has been my unconditional support throughout our time together. He knows my whole family history and loves me just as I am. His family has welcomed me as one of their own, something I thought I would never experience again. It's wonderful to feel so loved and accepted. Since our engagement, we have been busy with the wedding preparations, which are getting closer and closer. I feel truly happy with the direction my life is taking and excited to start this new chapter with James. Last week, something totally unexpected happened. I received a message from my father on Facebook. Seeing his name on the screen left me speechless. I didn't even know he had an account on the social network, so his message was a complete surprise. As I don't have any contact information for him, he must have found me through Facebook. In his message, he mentioned that he had found out about my upcoming wedding from some relatives. He expressed his joy at my marriage and congratulated me. Then came the most surprising part. He said he wanted to reconnect with me and asked for my phone number so we could talk. I found it very strange to read these words after so many years without any contact. I felt very confused about how to respond to his message. Why had he decided to contact me now, after so much time in silence? He had been the one who cut off all contact, who told me he wanted nothing to do with me and walked away without looking back. And now, suddenly, he wanted to reconnect. I didn't understand what was going on. The situation seemed suspicious to me, as if there was some ulterior motive behind the sudden change of attitude. I wasn't sure if I wanted to allow him back into my life, not even for a simple conversation. I consulted with James because I needed another perspective. He acknowledged that it was strange for my father to reach out now, so close to our wedding. He was also cautious and understood my discomfort. However, James pointed out that this could be my opportunity to express everything I never got to say and resolve unfinished business. I never had the chance to really say everything I wanted to when my father left. He reminded me that the decision was entirely mine. If I felt I needed to hear from my father or seek some kind of closure, I should consider it. After thinking about it for several days, I finally decided to send him my number and told him he could call me if he wanted to talk more. It wasn't an easy decision, but I felt like I at least needed to hear what he had to say. Today, when my father finally called, I had one of the most uncomfortable conversations of my life. Hearing his voice brought all the emotions rushing back, although I tried to keep them under control. One of the strangest parts was deciding how to address him. All my life I had called him Dad, but he himself had forbidden me to use that title when he left. He had given up being my father when he walked out of my life. How was I supposed to call him now? I ended up using his first name, which felt extremely uncomfortable. He started by asking me about my life over the years and asking superficial questions about my fiancé and our wedding. It felt like talking to a stranger trying to make small talk. I went with the flow for a while, but I couldn't ignore the main issue. Finally, I went straight to the point and asked, "What do you want from me? Why are you contacting me now after so many years of silence?" The words came out faster than I expected. I needed answers and I wasn't going to let him avoid them. After everything he had done, I deserved to know why he was trying to reconnect now. It was then that my father finally opened up. He explained how, after discovering my mother's infidelity, he had been overwhelmed with anger, not only towards her, but towards the whole situation. He admitted that he was so consumed by his feelings of betrayal that he ended up taking out much of that anger on me. He told me that discovering that I wasn't his biological daughter had been a huge betrayal, and that at the time, he felt that everything he thought he knew about our family had fallen apart. He confessed that at the time, every time he saw me, his anger increased because I was a constant reminder of what my mother had done to him. Hearing these words was very painful. It hurt to know that his feelings towards the situation had been so tied to his anger towards me, even though I had done nothing wrong. I was punished for no good reason. However, he later told me that when his anger began to dissipate, he began to miss me. He told me that he thought about me frequently and regretted how he had treated me, but by then he felt it was too late to contact me. He said he feared my reaction, that he was afraid I would reject him after all the pain he had caused me. However, when he found out about my upcoming wedding, he realized how much he wanted to be part of my life again, and that he regretted everything he had done to push me away. For the first time, Dad apologized for all the years lost, expressing how much he regretted his actions. He said he wanted us to have a fresh start. Listening to him, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. On the one hand, it was comforting to hear him acknowledge how his actions had hurt me. But on the other hand, I couldn't help feeling frustrated. If he had started to miss me years ago, why did he wait until now, until the news of my wedding, to finally contact me? What was the real reason? I had remained silent while he spoke, letting him express what he needed, but when he mentioned the idea of a new beginning, I couldn't hold back any longer. I told him straight out that I didn't want any of that. I explained that he was moving too fast and that I didn't trust him enough to have a new beginning. Although I appreciated that he had apologized, that didn't mean that I had forgiven him, not yet. Maybe I never would. I told him that while I understood his anger towards my mother for what she had done, and I could even understand how betrayed he must have felt, that didn't justify what he did to me. I reminded him that I was not to blame for any of this. I was just a child caught up in the middle of a situation I couldn't control. Yet he abandoned me with my mother as if I meant nothing to him. From one day to the next, I lost him, not only as a father, but as someone I could trust. He left me to face the consequences of it all on my own, and I had to live all these years without him in my life. Instead of acknowledging my pain, my father became defensive. He insisted that my anger was misdirected. He said that I should only be angry with my mother, not with him, because he also considered himself a victim of her actions. He kept emphasizing that everything she did, the way she cut me off and abandoned me, was a result of the pain she caused him. Then he started pressuring me to let go of the past and try to forget the years we had been apart. He said that all he wanted now was for us to move forward as if none of this had ever happened. Then he revealed that what he really wanted was the opportunity to walk me down the aisle at my wedding. Hearing that left me completely stunned. I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just yesterday he didn't even know if he still recognized me as his daughter, and now, suddenly, he wanted to participate in one of the most important moments of my life as if those lost years didn't matter. I pointed this out to him, telling him how absurd it was to make such a request when this was our first conversation after years. I reminded him that he had shown no interest in being my father and had not cared about me, but now he wanted to walk me down the aisle in front of everyone and act like my father. His request felt so sudden and out of place, and I couldn't understand how he thought it would make sense after everything he had done or failed to do over the years. So I flatly rejected my father. I told him there was no way he could possibly want to give me away. In fact, I had already asked my maternal grandfather to do so. My grandfather had been delighted with the honor and we share a very close bond. However, my father seemed upset to hear this. He began to accuse me of breaking his heart by not allowing him to do this for me. He said that I was being selfish by not letting him give me away and that I was just like my mother. He insisted that I had no right to ask my grandfather to give me away and that I should have tried to contact him first. My father then started demanding that I cancel the arrangement with my grandfather and that I should give him a chance to fix things, as if everything could be erased in an instant just because he had decided to communicate. I was surprised by his audacity. Fortunately, I am no longer that scared little girl. I refused and stood firm in my decision. I told him I wasn't going to change my mind. My grandfather was someone who had always been there for me, who had supported me when I felt abandoned by my father, and I wasn't going to turn my back on him because of someone who had been distant for so many years. My father kept trying to make me feel guilty. He insisted that I needed to prioritize his feelings above everything else, but I didn't give in. Since then, my father has been constantly texting me and I can't help but wonder, Reddit, am I the bad guy? Update 1. I want to clarify a few things that people keep asking in the comments. Even though my father cut off all contact with me, not all of his family sided with him. Some of my cousins on his side have kept in touch with me over the years, and I guess that's how my father has been able to keep up with my life. I find it strange that he's been keeping an eye on me through them but never contacted me until now. As for my father's parents, they died years before my parents' divorce, so they weren't around for the whole drama of the infidelity and its consequences. I sometimes wonder how they would have reacted, considering how close I was to them growing up, but since they're no longer around, I'll never know if they would have taken my side or my father's. My mother's family, on the other hand, turned completely against her after my father revealed her infidelity during the divorce. To this day, they still don't like her for what she did, but fortunately they have never rejected me. My maternal grandparents, in particular, have been a constant presence in my life. They have always been there for me, giving me support and love, especially throughout the drama with my father. Even when I went to university and cut off contact with my mother, they understood perfectly why I didn't want to keep in touch with her, and they respected my decision to stay away. When I asked my maternal grandfather to give me away, he was incredibly happy and that meant the world to me. He has been such an important figure in my life that I can't imagine anyone else in that role. He was so happy and proud that I asked him, and I can't take that away from him no matter how much my father begs me. To be completely honest, I have no desire for my father to walk me down the aisle. After everything that has happened, I'm still not sure what kind of relationship, if any, I want to have with him in the future. There is so much unresolved pain, anger, and confusion. I'm not sure I can ever have a relationship with him again just because he suddenly wants to be part of my life. I'm still processing everything and I'm not ready to give him that place of honor at my wedding, especially when I don't know where our situation is. Unlike my father, my mother has respected my wishes and has not contacted me, which is exactly what I want. I don't think I could handle it if she started contacting me now too. Update 2. After much reflection on all the advice I received from Reddit, I have come to realize that I am truly happy without my father in my life. I no longer have a place for him, so I don't appreciate his sudden interest in reconnecting. It feels like an attempt to re-enter my life on his terms, and I am no longer willing to allow that. As he was clearly not prepared to hear me in conversation, I realized that the only way to truly express my feelings was in writing. I needed to take the time to organize my thoughts and put it all into words. Just because he seemed to have moved on and wanted to pretend that nothing had happened, didn't mean that I had. I wasn't ready to just forgive him and pretend that all the years of pain had disappeared. James, my fiancé, has been incredibly supportive throughout this process. He encouraged me to finally express my thoughts to get it off my chest and then cut off any further contact with my father, which is exactly what I did. I didn't want to continue carrying around all the unresolved emotions, and I knew that telling my father exactly how I felt would be the only way to get some closure, regardless of whether he understood or accepted it. So this is what I sent my father on Facebook. I want to start by saying that I completely understand that you were angry with Mom for what she did to you, but I was just a child caught between the two of you. However, you decided to walk away from me, you abandoned me, and I had to grow up without you in my life. You have no idea how many nights I have cried for you, wishing you would come back, wondering if you even thought about me. I didn't deserve all that. You said you missed me after your anger had subsided, but the truth is that you left me alone with my pain all these years. You didn't even try to contact me. Your actions speak louder than any words. You left a void in my life that I had to learn to fill on my own. And now, when everything is finally starting to feel somewhat stable in my life, you get in touch because I'm getting married. Why didn't you get in touch with me before, when I needed you the most, when I was trying to pick up the pieces of my life? You were nowhere to be found. You said you want to make things right and start over, but that's not something I can just jump into. I've spent so much of my life without you, and I'm not sure I want a relationship with you at all. Just because you've decided to show up now doesn't mean I'm ready to forgive everything and move on. As for giving you away at the altar, I'm not comfortable with that. I've already asked my grandfather and he's happy to be there for me. Asking him to step aside now to accommodate you doesn't feel right, and I can't do that to him. He's the one who's been there for me through everything, and he deserves to be the one to give me away. Please understand that I'm not angry with you anymore. I'm just hurt, and I need time to figure out if there's even a place for you in my life in the future. I'm not ready to have you back in my life yet, and I don't know if I ever will be. So this is goodbye for now. I'm cutting off contact with you for good, so please don't try to get in touch again. I hope you find your peace as I have. After sending this, I blocked my father so he couldn't contact me anymore. This has been very difficult, but it's my way of taking control and moving forward with my life on my own terms. Update 3. Today was my wedding rehearsal and everything was going well until I was completely surprised by an unexpected arrival. My father showed up, accompanied by one of my cousins whom I had invited. I was so surprised that I could hardly process it. I hadn't seen my father in so long that it took me a moment to even recognize him. He looks much older now than I remember. After all the years of silence, the last thing I expected was for my father to show up in person. My cousin explained to me that apparently my father had been begging her for days to let him come with her, and in the end she had no choice but to bring him. James was naturally furious when he saw them and was ready to throw my father and my cousin out, but my father begged me to talk to him. In spite of everything, I decided to take him aside for a private conversation. I needed to know what was going on in his head and why he was here, especially after everything I had written to him. As soon as we were alone, my father told me that my message had only made him feel more guilty and that he was willing to do anything to earn my forgiveness, that he would do everything possible to show that he was now a changed man. He insisted that he really wanted to be in my life from now on and that he wanted my husband's future children to know him. I got angry and told him that he had no right to show up now, after everything, and expect me to just let him back into my life. He couldn't just show up and act like everything could be fixed in an instant. I told him that his turning up without my consent and begging for forgiveness was manipulative, not genuine, and that he had no right to ask anything of me, especially not the privilege of being part of one of the most important moments of my life. I reminded him of the years he spent ignoring me, making me feel like I meant nothing to him and how I had been forced to live without a father because of his selfish actions. I told him that his apology now did not erase the years of pain, the abandonment, or the way he destroyed our family. Then, with that familiar sense of entitlement, my father asked me if I would at least reconsider inviting him to my wedding. He said that even if he couldn't walk me down the aisle, he would still be happy to attend as a guest. He kept repeating how much he had suffered without me and how he wanted to be there for me as the father he had never been. I told him that it was already too late, that no matter how hard he tried to manipulate the situation, it wasn't going to work. I told him that he had lost me years ago and that there was no going back. I asked him to leave quietly and not to cause a scene, as it was embarrassing enough that he had gate-crashed my event. After finishing venting to my father, I went and confronted my cousin. She knew how much pain my father had caused me, and yet she had betrayed me by allowing him to come. The fact that she went behind my back and brought him back into my life without even telling me was unforgivable. I felt completely betrayed by her, and I told her bluntly that she was disinvited from my wedding. I've had enough of people disrespecting me and pressuring me to forgive someone when I'm not ready. This is my wedding, my moment, and I'm not going to let anyone ruin it. Update 4. Hi everyone, it's been a while since my last update, but I've been really busy. James and I got married and the day was everything I had hoped for. Our wedding went without a hitch and I was surrounded by the people who truly love and support me. It was a day of joy and celebration and the start of a new chapter in our lives. After seeing my father on the day of my wedding rehearsal, I haven't seen or heard from him since, and honestly, that's exactly how I want it. He hasn't contacted me since and it feels like a weight has been lifted. I'm glad I told him everything I needed to. There are no more unanswered questions, no guilt, no wondering if he'll try to worm his way back into my life. Now I just focus on living the rest of my life happily with James. Wish me luck, guys.